Hey everyone, and welcome to Stronger. I am Ruth Jefferson. We have Phil Merton and
How you doing?
Mark Wenzel, otherwise known as Marcus Aurelius tonight. Um,
Mhm.
we are gonna
You're very
hey,
respectful.
we're gonna hang out here for a couple minutes and chat while we wait for people to come online.
All right.
I will not make the same mistake I made before by talking to people who are not here yet.
Talking to people who are not here yet.
You don't remember for last week when you picked on me for asking people who weren't here yet a
Oh,
question? It was like,
oh.
and if you're not here, let us know. And you were
If you're
like,
not here, let us know. Yes, that's right. Yes. Ah, yeah, yeah. Like all the sermons I've ever heard where the pastor yelled at the people who didn't come to church. Yep. I'm here. Talk to me. No, I'm here to tell you about these people who should be here. We love those sermons.
so
Raise your
Phil.
hand if you're not here.
Exactly. Mm.
So Phil, Mark, while we're waiting, I have a trivia question for both of you.
A trivia question. I'm pretty trivial. Go ahead.
What is tomorrow?
The day after the day our taxes were due.
That is true. So if you have not gotten your
Tuesday.
taxes in yet, that'd be a good thing to do today.
Hmm.
Um, yes, it is also Tuesday.
Ooh, can I sing it? Today is Tuesday. You know what that means. We're going to have a special guest. Nobody else remembers the Mickey Mouse Club.
Wow, missed that part of it.
Get
Yeah,
up the
the only thing
broom,
I
sweep the
remember
place
from
clean, brush
the
up the
Mickey.
mat so that the welcome can be seen. Special guest star day. It was Tuesday.
Wow. Okay.
Tuesday is guest star day. Da, da.
Well, we have a guest star today that might give you a hint as to what tomorrow is.
Guest star. Oh, I'm so excited.
We are introducing the guest star while we give just another minute for people to get here.
Look at that.
Is it Pie Day?
Oh,
Oh, that was
Yeti
3
Pie
March.
Day. Yeah, that was. There it is.
For those of you listening to us with just audio, what we're looking at right now is a picture of a lemon meringue pie with a candle in it.
Mm, sure, it's lemon. I'll take your word for it. It's lemon. I can't see into the meringue.
Yeah,
It's not a key lime pie. It's a lemon. Okay.
it's a lemon meringue pie. I would show you the box because I didn't make it, but
Okay.
yeah.
Mm. Oh, that makes me hungry. I like
Chef
lemon
MC
meringue
made
pie.
this for us this time
Ah,
around.
ah, oh, cool.
um, but no, tomorrow is the celebration of 1 year since we first started streaming Stronger on Facebook.
Okay.
So
It's
that
been
is
a
pretty
year. That is very exciting.
exciting. It has been a year. And
It
a
has
lot
been a
has changed
year.
in a year. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, since we first started, we have Mark with us.
That's right.
Um, we also have this really cool background.
Yes. That.
Um, and some other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for those of you who are either watching us now or who will be listening to us online, we just want to say thank you for walking with us through that time
Okay.
and for continuing to walk with us because this journey is not over yet.
Right.
um,
Listen to the grandbaby sounds. Ooh, ooh.
all right.
Drifting up from the kitchen. Yeah.
Yes. Oh. Oh.
So let's go ahead and get started. If you joined us for the last episode, one of the things the main topic that we talked about was racism in the jury selection process.
Mhm.
We wanted to talk about that specifically because it is a challenge that people who who are returning citizens and their families um, will have dealt with, and it's also something that's important as we consider the conversation about how we walk with people.
Okay.
So, kind of as we're going through that, we would be missing something a lot if we didn't actually also talk about some of the objections that people may have as we get into this conversation, and really where some of those rests in this idea of the church versus the government. Is it the church's job really to do anything when it comes to this, especially when we have verses like render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, or when we have other verses that talk about things like the government wielding the sword for a reason, and that being a power that's different than the power that the church wields. But we can't look at verses like that without also looking at verses like those that tell us that we are to be in this world, even as we are not to be of it. Kind of as we take a look at this conversation tonight, this would be a great time for us to say, if you have not already, we would encourage you to watch Friday's episode of Harmonize, because the topic that's covered there really is one that also would shed some light on this one as well. And we'll go ahead and place those links here in the chat. But as we were doing that, Phil, Mark, if you have anything to say, this would be a good place to go ahead and get the conversation started.
That part where Jesus says, King James says, render unto Caesar. NIV, it says, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. That came up in Bible class last week at prison, and kicked around the question, since Jesus really didn't elaborate on that. What do I owe Caesar? What do I owe the people who are in authority? And what don't I owe? So that a lot needs to be said about that. I don't owe, one of the guys brought up, I don't owe absolute unquestioning loyalty. I don't owe, I'll do whatever you say, boss. I don't owe that. I owe that to God, but not to any human government. What do I owe? I owe it to the people in authority to point it out when they are blowing it. I owe that to them. Somehow bring that to their attention. John the Baptist did it. It cost him his head, but he did it. Paul did it. People who were abusing their authority with him, he did that several times. So that don't forget what we do owe Caesar, and we owe Caesar the truth.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I hadn't thought of it too much. Just in the very context of what Jesus was speaking at that point in time, right? He was just really talking about taxes.
Yeah.
Right? Pay the taxes that you owe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that context, it was, they probably didn't feel like they were getting anything in return for their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at least if we pay our property taxes, you say, well, that's taking care of, my garbage getting picked up, the roads being maintained,
mm-hmm.
Snow plowed and that kind of stuff, by city government and county governments. But, for them to give to Rome it went to Rome.
Mm-hmm.
How much did it really, benefit them in any way, I wonder. That's kind of an interesting thought there. But
paid then, for the invading army.
Yeah. So that's interesting that he would even say that.
But I think it is interesting. They were talking about taxes, and he didn't say, pay the taxes. He said, give him what is due him, which is what? He didn't even weigh in on the tax thing. Not really. I'm sure he would have said, pay the taxes. Don't get yourself in trouble. Why would you bring the wrath of Caesar down on you unnecessarily? And still, he left it ambiguous.
I wouldn't say you left it too ambiguous though, because even in looking at the coin, it was whose face is on it.
Hmm. Okay. So it's something we got to hash out. He didn't hash out for us. He said, "What do I owe? What is rightfully the government's, and what isn't?" Yeah. Things we got to. He said, "I want you guys to think about this. I want you to talk about it. I want you to come up with the answers." So we have a system here where jury selection process. It's doesn't it's not equitable. So what do I owe Caesar?
I think a large part of this, as we get into this conversation, is going to have to do with cultural changes, because it may not be that there are things that we can do necessarily when it comes to the legal process itself. But what we can do is we can use the influence that we do have and the opportunities that we do have. And part of that goes back into teaching and the culture of the church, because we still are living in a day, even though it's maybe less than it has been in the past, where people are actually involved in things like churches and even like a community gathering opportunities, where the church also has a voice in those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so as it relates to the culture, what are we saying about things like our duty as citizens? What are we saying about our identity as human beings and the way that God sees us in that?
Mm-hmm.
And as we're looking at those are going to be things that weigh in and contribute to the dialogue that needs to be had here, as we're looking at what should the response of the church be and how can churches help.
Mm-hmm. Think of if people might be quick to point out, give Caesar what is Caesar's, and rightly so. But along with that, Paul in Romans rejoice. Let's see. I better look it up here. Don't want to misquote it. Romans 12, where he here it comes. Let's see. In 15, he says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn, live in harmony with others. Don't be proud, but be willing to associate with the humble. Don't be conceited." Okay, so to rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Okay, so here I sit in my position. I don't see a problem from where I'm sitting. Therefore, all must be well. But to be able to step out of my position and say, how does the world look like from where you're standing? And if you're grieving because of something going on, well, here's Paul saying, well, I need to grieve along with you. I need to look at your grief. I need to get some idea of your grief.
Mm-hmm.
Think of another verse that says, "Do unto others as you have them do unto you." Well, that's good, of course. It's in the Bible, but in some ways we have to take it even farther. God is calling us to take it even farther. There's some things where I'm okay with it, but for somebody else, it doesn't feel that way, and I need to stand in their shoes. Just had a conversation with my grandson today, my 14-year-old grandson. He told my wife that you have a piece of food stuck between your teeth, and she said to him, "Okay, I'm glad you told me that, but just understand that that's kind of thing that if we were in a public place, you wouldn't say that to me, would you? You'd do it a lot. You wouldn't say it the way you said it." And he said, "Sure would." And she said, "Oh, how would you like it if I said something like that to you when your friends were around out there in public?" And he said, "I wouldn't mind." And he wouldn't care. So he just figured, well, so I don't mind, so I'm going to announce it loudly if to anybody else. I see food stuck between your teeth. And it's like, no, whoa, slow down. You got to see the world the way other people see it. Work on that, son. Uh, so do unto others as you have them do it to you. I don't have a problem. Well, here's where we got to expand our ability to empathize.
I hear what you're saying there. And there's an extent to which I would agree with that, but I would also say we kind of maybe need to go into that a bit more because of the fact that like when we're talking about the topics like we're talking about now, it's more than just would I be okay with that because ultimately when we refer to things like the statistics that we were looking at last week, um, it's not a matter of things that anyone would or should be okay with.
Right. Good point.
So I feel like that's an important part of the
Uh-huh.
conversation there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be okay with that stuff. You are correct.
Diamond says, I wish more people would learn that lesson. Just because you don't mind being treated a certain way doesn't mean others would want to be treated that way.
Exactly. Yep.
We've got quite a bit of chaos going on around here, it seems like.
What's what? Did you dial yours down a little bit so that we can't hear the chaos?
Well, yeah, I was muting myself so you couldn't hear it.
Okay. Okay.
But as you were talking, Phil, my mind went to, we were talking about the church and jury selection, and as the conversation started, I went, well, wait, what are we talking about the church as being?
Hmm.
And then as you were, bringing up those passages from Romans, those were individuals,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Love your neighbor and these others. You were talking about how to deal with individuals as individuals. The church is us. It's not an entity.
Okay.
And sometimes to think in terms, obviously that's not a universal thing throughout Christendom. I mean, the various church bodies will approach that very differently and feel it's their obligation to be as a church body, doing things, and then and then others are reticent to do that, and you kind of go back and forth. It's like, well, what should we be doing? But really, the entity, the church, needs to stay out of the politics, kind of. But the people can be
Right.
involved. Is probably where it needs to
Yeah.
be.
Okay. Good point. Yeah. In fact, I think it's going to be a more powerful force rather than my denomination issuing a statement or something like that. It's going to be much more powerful if God's people are all act as individual voters, as individual citizens, doing whatever we can, are pushing back on injustice and dealing lovely with in a loving way with people who are experiencing injustice. It's going to work much better than just some kind of formal statement from a church body.
I would definitely say that as far as a formal statement from a church body, there's only so much that's going to do. At the same time, we can't take the conversation completely out of that because if we do that, then it gives people an excuse to say like this is not like something that we have to be a part of. This is not something that we should be looking at because even referring back to some of the cases that we looked at last time, one of the reasons why people can feel as though like they're okay with reacting in the way that they react is because the church doesn't necessarily have a stance on that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can't make those inferences, so sometimes it has to be spelled out. You are right.
Yeah. Well, that's a line. That's a line to walk, I think, in the sense of how much do you say, how much can you say in such a statement? But and I've read a number of social statements from another Lutheran body, and they are pretty broad in really just, okay, we're laying out all these different things here. And I don't know if they ever really come down and say, this is the way you have to deal with it, but these are all the things that are involved. These are all the different thoughts you might want to think about, as you're making decisions, but not necessarily saying this is the decision you have to make. I may be representing that, but from some of the reading I've done on that, that's the way it seemed to be. It's like we're just kind of laying this all out there, all the different considerations of things. And but I think they ultimately still leave it up to the individuals and then individual congregations and to do it. And I think that's powerful too, when it's a group of people that's in the setting. We're here in the city, we're saying this, we're here in Milwaukee or Minneapolis or wherever, and we're making this statement of, and somehow walking that line that it doesn't, you try not to be political, in the sense of I'm identifying with this political party or that political party, but no, this is the principle that I stand on. And that's something that's probably been lost in some way, that there isn't just that principled place. You're either this or that. And I don't know who pushed it, who made that, happen, but it's very hard to hear anybody just talk about certain principles that they follow without it becoming you're this or that, party. Okay. And yeah,
I would definitely agree that that bringing in principles and focusing on that line of things is definitely a better approach. As far as getting into the topic of people who believe this thing or that thing being one party or another, I feel like that in itself, while it is something that that does happen, is something that shouldn't happen, because I feel like it's harmful to the dialogue.
Very much so, yeah. I can see how I have seen that where wet blanket gets thrown on all discussion right away when you start to say a principle and somebody says, that sounds like you're a liberal, or it sounds like you're one of those right wingers or whatever. Yeah, it's like, can we just talk about this thing?
Right.
I think more so when we get into conversations like this, when we're talking about things like racism and jury selection and returning citizens, I think the assumption is more often than not that people who think about these issues, talk about them, and care about them are more liberal leaning automatically.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
And I feel like a focus on that either way, kind of returning to the point earlier, is harmful.
Yeah, boy, getting to what you said, Mark, it's about certain principles that being a follower of Jesus, we have as part of our core values. Let's talk about these principles. And then we can start to expand on that. Okay, how do we see these playing out in current situations in our community? And then that isn't a liberal issue or a conservative issue.
Demon says, that is that shallow politics, and it is super problematic, especially for middle ground people like me.
Oh, yeah.
Middle ground.
Right, middle ground. That can be seen. That's described often as wishy-washy, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, and I think that's a book I haven't read, but a lot of people read it, and what is that Lutheran middle ground kind of thought process that some have, and again, it's based on the principles, based on and that you can take it's kind of like looking at Jesus, Jesus and Jesus's third way, of doing things.
Exactly.
It's a different way of doing things, not just or that, but it's something that's focused on solving the problems and of course, we would focus on people and precious souls in the sense of not necessarily eternity from our perspective right away, but of life, of justice, of principled mercy and justice.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's not. Middle ground can seem like, it's a compromise position. It's a spectrum, and we're just halfway across the spectrum to planted ourselves there, and it's not necessarily what we're talking about. It's kind of like we're we're asking a different question to begin with. You guys are coming up with two polar opposite answers to the same question. We're asking a different question, and from where we're standing, I can see you've got something and you've got something. Let's see if we can pull it together. But what's the right question?
Well, and isn't it, so often when you start talking about those poles, those opposites, it's, well, do I win or do I win? And do
Right.
you lose or who loses? Instead of, and the middle ground says someone out there wins.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me or you, but it's them that win.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Where the problem is, where the suffering is.
Where the suffering is. Bringo. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
take that. I would take that one step further though, and
Go
say
ahead.
that it takes winning out of the equation entirely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, we talk about, some people use the term win-win situation. I'm not sure if that fits here. That just popped in my head.
Mhm.
But I think of when you have a marriage, and it's a we talk about compromise within the marriage a lot of times, and again, people kind of balk at that, and it's like, well, no, it's not like um, it's not like 50-50 all the time. It's not like, well, we kind of compromised on something that we both don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes the compromise is, no, you get to do what you like today, and
Yeah.
and I'm going to do that, and then maybe the next time I'll get to do something and I'm going to enjoy what you're enjoying,
Mhm.
because that's part of the arrangement. It may not be what I want to do, but I'm going to enjoy you enjoying what you want to do.
Yeah.
And,
You enjoying what you
yeah,
want to do.
and so when we look at people who are suffering and struggling, and what do they need, can we put ourselves into the perspective of saying, can I take joy in what's happening in their life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of strikes me right now. It's like, am I taking, when I look at this other person's life, am I taking joy in it, or am I sad by what I see?
Okay.
And if I'm sad, well, now there's something that needs to, I'm okay, but am I sad for them? I'm empathetic, obviously, to some of others. And, there's just and that's where, you know, just the news this evening here in Milwaukee, of a, 17-year-old girl with a, 1-month-old baby, and she gets, killed in a road rage act,
Yeah.
in the city last night.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? You can't even put words on it. It's just, it's sad, it's maddening, and somebody's joy has been ripped away, somebody's life has been ripped away, but then all the joy that's been ripped away, and that's not a side. That's
Exactly.
But as soon as we start talking about how we solve it, it becomes sides instead of, no, look, how do we stop this from happening? How do we prevent a baby from growing up without her mother, and a mother not having her daughter, and all of that? And
I'm trying to think back to when my wife and I, years ago, we led marriage enrichment seminars, and it's been too many years now. I can't remember the words. Dealing with conflict, we had several approaches to that all started with C. There was concession. Let's just do it your way. It's fine. There was compromise. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. I can't remember what the third one was, but I remember one of the one of the great things Shoot For was where we collaborate, and we achieve together. We achieve something that neither one of us had in mind.
Mm.
It's a little more like what you're talking about. Instead of saying, "Well, what do I want out of this? What do you want out of this?" and I'm going to get as much as I can. It's like, no, wait a minute. What do we both actually want? And maybe it's something different from what either of us had in mind to begin with. Let's work toward that. So this is definitely the sort of thing we're talking about here. I want my side to win. I want my side to win. I want that baby to have her mother alive instead of dying. Let's say we both want that, and let's work on that instead of what my side says they want.
Yeah, those are definitely good points. I want us to go ahead and take a look at Diamond's last comment, and then I feel like it's really important for us to bring what we're talking about back into the realm of when we're talking about things like jury selection and how that affects people.
Mm-hmm.
Not the comment about cupcakes, although cupcakes are awesome.
Cupcakes are awesome. I think we can agree on that. I don't think either side loses out.
Yeah. As long as you like chocolate cupcakes. Evan says, and it's even crazier when you're a middle ground person and people actually use your appearance or disability against you to basically try to make you pick a side.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Because you are this kind of person, you must adopt this position. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's also bring this conversation back into the topic of jury selection.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking about principles and an approach that removes winning from the equation and is looking for basically the highest good to come from the situation.
Okay.
So how would we apply this this idea of principles in the realm of the church when it comes to creating culture that that helps to make these things more healthy in as much as we can? Because we've already mentioned earlier that the church and the government, they're two separate realms, but in those places where people within the church or where the church itself has those opportunities to minister to walk with people who may be going through the criminal justice process, who may be a part of the criminal justice process, what are some principles to keep in mind there?
By making people aware of some of the inequities and how that affects the outcome. The more what is the principle? I want the best for my neighbor. I want to love my neighbor. And if my neighbor is being tried and convicted and sentenced in a criminal justice system that where the odds are stacked against him, I need to understand that. If I see and because knowing that, when I know that somebody has been through the system and they have been arrested, they've been convicted, they've done some time. Let's all make each other aware that doesn't necessarily mean what you might think it means. This is a bad person. Only really bad people go to prison. It might not have been as bad as what you thought. It might. There's a lot of reasons why people end up in prison, and not all of the reasons are what you'd hope they'd be.
Mm-hmm.
So cut the guy some slack when you find out he's got a prison record. Now that's just applying to individuals. As far as what can we do about the system? Inequities in the system. What do we do?
I think as the church, and there I'm thinking kind of like, let's say, starting congregational level for the church, and you have somebody in your congregation that is involved with the criminal justice system in some way, shape, or form. To, you know, I see all the people that are involved, in the sense of it's not just the person charged with the crime; it's the
Okay.
family members that are of that person. This may be happening totally internal to your congregation. The victim of the crime may be a member of your congregation, and as well. And I know a situation like that right now where maybe the victim isn't twice isn't there, but there's family involved and others involved, and how do you as pastors, as congregation, maybe starting with the pastors, you're looking at all sides of where there's pain and suffering, and you're dealing with a person that has committed some kind of crime that has hurt people in their family possibly, and the people in the middle are the like the loved ones who are like, you hurt us but we love you and we're hurting for you. And it's not a simple thing, right? You can't just say, well, yeah, you did wrong and this is what's going to happen, and focus on that, but you also have to focus on the pain that's being, where the people that are victims and hurt by this, what's going on there, and navigating through that to be supportive yet on all sides. And then, for the, and what's happening going through the system, to be open to listen to that cry, of injustice, or this doesn't seem right, or I don't understand it. And probably at that point in time, it becomes incumbent to try to figure out what is going on in the system if we don't know already. And maybe sometimes that's our introduction, is because somebody close to us suddenly gets involved and we go, what's going on here, right? And then we start looking into things. And, that's a lot of times where our the grassroots change starts, because now you're getting to feel what this is like. And it's not just those people over there, but it's you, it's your family member. I often talk to guys in jail, and they're complaining a lot about the system. And I say, well, when you get out, one of the things you do as a member of society is share your story and talk to people. And, I know you want to leave this place behind, but at the same time, do you want your loved one coming into the same situation? If they get into trouble, do you want the same setting that for them, the same lack of things? So it's kind of just there's just so much that's going on. You can't just look at it from just a political perspective, a systemic. You got to deal with all the people, and then allow the people to carry that forward as they can testify to what they've experienced.
Okay. Putting a human face on all this. This is a guy I know, I've talked to. Boy, that changes so much. At church yesterday, a friend came and introduced her friend, and explained that he had just gotten out of prison after doing a 23-year bit. And here he was in church, and really wanted to meet us, really wanted to get around and get back into things. So just seeing this face and knowing this was a guy who I don't know, I didn't ask, they didn't say what he was convicted of, but whatever he did, he got a 23, I don't know how many years sentence, but he served 23 years of it. Wow. And now here he is worshiping Jesus together with me. And that, it changes things.
Yeah, I think something that may make this conversation more difficult for people within churches is this idea that people who go to jail or prison are somehow other than, and
Yes.
that kind of strips away the humanity. So yeah, um,
Yeah, the more that individuals can put a face and a humanity on, these people who are involved in crimes, and um, see the suffering all around it. And that's the thing, is to see these humans, and then to think in terms of, if this were my son, if this were my, you know, daughter, if this were my, husband, wife, how would we deal with it? How would I want people to deal with them?
Mm-hmm.
Would I want them to hear their voice? And um, the the news becomes very real when it's, becomes personal, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of sometimes, just how do we encourage those voices? And that's a challenging thing. If somebody's been in the system at some point in time, and now they're in a totally different place, do they want to share that?
Yeah.
And we have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to share your story or not, and
Mm-hmm.
it'd be very valuable. But sometimes it's not for them. Again, it becomes their choice of what to do with their story.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be very careful of people's stories that way.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think when people are willing to share stories, then um, I would say that definitely an acknowledgement of the trust that's there is would be
Mm-hmm.
warranted.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's sacred ground when somebody opens up about that. I mean, when my friend introduced this man to me yesterday. It was, wow, what an honor. I wouldn't have guessed if you hadn't told me. I just, oh, this is a friend of and good to meet you. And and then to hear that added dimension, wow, that was a sacred trust. And I'm so glad that they decided we're one to trust us with that.
Mm. All right. Well, Mark, are you smiling? Do you have something that's on your mind
No,
right now?
I think it's other things in my mind that I'm not, that are distracting from this.
Mm.
Okay.
But I want to.
He's Marcus Aurelius. He has high, lofty affairs in his mind. You have to give him, let him have his
I
way.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the things that Diamond's been sharing tonight too. That's been kind of,
Mm-hmm.
there's a story there that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and but yeah, how do we share those stories of someone else's without their knowledge or permission?
Yeah, it's always tough. I share stories a lot, and I try to alter details, little insignificant details, so it's harder to trace what I'm talking about, and it's usually successful, but not always. Uh, I think I've told you about that one of my friends who was one of the most hardcore alcoholics I've ever known. Just couldn't make any progress, and I worked with her for years, and she finally, I used to. She was such a textbook alcoholic in so many ways that I could tell a story about something she'd done, because this is what alcoholics do here, and I'd tell a story about her, but I wouldn't, no details. I would try to make it as generic as I could. Uh, and I remember it was in one of the treatment facilities that I was doing some of my work in. she checked in there, and wasn't too long when people recognized there was a connection between her and me. They're saying, "Oh, you must be that lady that Phil's always talking about." Fortunately, she was fine with that, but geez, still, that was not what I wanted to happen. Now, generally, I try to even alter the, talk about it. If it's a woman, I say like, this guy I know. I'll just do everything I can to cover the trail.
I think at this point, something that is important to acknowledge here is that even as you're sharing stories with other people, I think it's important to note the difference between gossip and like sharing things in a way that that is not gossip. And then even within that, I think there may be some space there for the importance of actually talking to people to get their permission to share things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that honors that trust.
Yep.
But yeah.
And boy, it's so great when
I
people
agree
are
there's
willing
a fine
to.
line.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of face that even in the hospital where, you're talking to a patient as a chaplain, and then we need to document something from, of a visit.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's like, I think I've gotten fairly decent at it. It's like, they're struggling with some, relationship issues, and that's it. I don't go into
Right.
details of what those relationships are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say, really feels like her husband is lying to her all the time and cheating on her. You don't know. It's like struggling with some relationship issues, and
Yeah.
but it is, I think that's something that comes around in so many different ways. Like you say, when we're doing ministry, we want to share somebody's story because, boy, it just illustrates something so well, and yet, yeah, hey, I know that person. Yeah. And yeah, and Diamond, you do not have to be sorry. This is, but what you're writing is very, very impactful right now, and I think it's something that there needs to be further conversation about to understand how it hits home for you and where that line is, because I don't think we always get it. Because
I think we know what our next show is going to be about.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Boy, yeah. To give people the space to tell their stories, and what about telling their stories for them?
Right. Yeah. I guess I just have to tell my own stories when I'm preaching.
Yeah. There is
that pastor sure does talk about himself.
Yeah, there's that part of it. Yeah. And then it's like, what did he just say he did?
Well, there is that. I'm a textbook sinner. I can tell you if we can approach it from that point of view. I guess.
Diamond, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I'm missing notes. I'm not seeing the notes you guys are seeing, Doug.
Are you in the chat tab?
I don't see my chat tab. Where's my chat tab?
Mark, is it to your right too, or?
Yeah, it's to my right, and I'm not sure how it got there.
So, Phil,
there it is.
Okay,
now I see it. Okay. Keep teasing your mouth and unlock your tongue. Yeah, this is nice.
And
Okay.
today on Stronger, Phil learns how to use the chat tab.
Look at that. Well, I'm viewing this on my teensy weensy little monitor, and it just only has so much room for stuff, so I keep missing this. Okay. Well, now I have it.
Yeah.
Super duper. Thanks, Diamond. These are way useful.
Yeah. Those are
All right.
gems.
Unlock your tongue. Yes.
All right. Well, I think this might be a good time for us to call it a night.
Hey.
Getting stronger by learning new things every day.
Even while on the air.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, gee.
The more you learn,
Exposed before everybody. Ah.
Phil gets to pray.
Okay. I do.
Yeah, you
Okay.
do.
Okay. Lord Jesus, thank you that it's always good to be, it doesn't matter, right, wrong, I'm loved, and I'm forgiven. And boy, oh boy, to be able to stand in that place and say, and it's okay if people know that about me, how wrong I am. Thank you. Thank you for being able to help me to get better at that, Lord. And help all of us who have a story to tell to know when to tell it. Help all of us who need to hear people's stories to open up our ears and say, wait a minute, somebody's trying to share something important with me. Help all the people that are suffering injustice to not suffer anymore, and help us all the people that aren't affected by that same injustice. Help us to be to stand in their shoes and say, wait a minute, if you're hurting, I'm hurting. You did that for us, Jesus, and help us follow in your footsteps and say, where are people hurting? What do they need from me? Pray in your name, Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Seems homie back there wants to pray too. Yes, Lord, hear our pet's prayer. Amen. Hey guys, instead of like awkwardly closing, you want to sing happy birthday?
Oh, happy birthday to Stronger.
Yeah.
Let's see that birthday pie again. Let's get a look at that pie. There it is. Oh, no, it's meringue glory. Oh, Stronger. May you have several more.
Happy birthday,
Birthday
to
to
you.
To you.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday. Happy
to
birthday.
you.
Oh,
Happy birthday,
dear old
dear
Stronger.
Stronger.
Oh,
Happy birthday
happy birthday to
to you.
you.
And that wasn't awkward at all.
Happy birthday to Stronger. Happy birthday to Stronger. Getting stronger every week. Happy birthday to Stronger. Get them gains. Thank you for that, Diamond. All right.
Mhm.
Good night, everyone.
See y'all.